Broadcasting from Hollywood, California, it's Grant's Rants, Hollywood Talk.
Bethany Frankel does her part to save the world. Kate Casey calls in to review Netflix's wild documentary, Tiger King, and Mandy Slutsker joins in to rant about Vanderpump Rules and the state of reality TV show production. That and more, starting now. Let the ranting begin. I am joined by you. You're listening to me, and I'm going to chat for a little bit. We do have some people coming on the show to discuss various topics, so I've switched up the format. I want to be able to include more people on the show than usual. I did put a video out on my social media saying, look, the podcast community should come together and record together for our listeners. People are craving content. I did hear from a handful of people, which I'll be honest with you is a little disappointing because, I feel like we should all be coming together and producing content for our loyal listeners. But those that I did hear from, I'm really proud and happy for that. That's a good thing. And look, I've also opened it up to people who haven't podcasted before. I mean, we've got time. If this is something you've always wanted to do and you want to talk with me, let me know. You can definitely do that. You can find me on social, or if you're not on any of those types of platforms, you can always email the podcast at what is it? It's Grants Pod Rants, GRANTSPODRANTS @gmail.com. So, let me know if that's something you want to do. There's very little I can do to help the world, but if there's anything I can do, I can put out a podcast. So that's kind of my spiel with that. So let me know if you're interested. What have I been up to? I've been watching The Real Housewives of New York vacation trips. Watch What Happens Live and iReal Housewives put out a list of basically it's all the vacations that they took. And it's great to look back. It's great to look at these shows before they were so overly produced. I'm looking at people like Ramona and Sonia and Kelly Ben Simone. Like, you can't produce these people. You just can't. They're, so authentically themselves in these episodes. And then you flash to watching something like Atlanta Housewives or just this last season of Jersey, and it's so overproduced and exhausted. It makes me, miss the old days of what these shows used to be. I've been going through all of this, obviously, alone. I hear from very little people, but I've heard from a lot of listeners, which has been lovely. I still have little Callie, of course, and we've been going for long, long walks, which I appreciate, but I do wish I could see somebody. I guess someone's weed whacking now, so if you hear that, someone's doing some yard work, which is actually, a welcomed thing. It's a sign of life. It means that someone is outside and somebody cares about keeping up. And that's kind of what I've been doing, honestly. I've been keeping up with the apartment complex here. Over the years, I've put in a lot of different plants, mainly palm leaves and just, tropical plants around the pool and stuff like that. But now I ventured outside to the front of my apartment. I've been putting in some plants and weeding. And I will say, if you're not scared to leave the house, go and do some weeding because it is very, very, what's the correct word I'm thinking of? It's very satisfying. Oh my God, is it satisfying to see a patch of weeds and then, put on a podcast or some music and just weed away. And then you're making progress. You're doing something that probably should be done anyway. You're outside breathing fresh air. So that's something I would recommend. I've been keeping myself very busy with work and the podcasts. My God, I'm still working. We're doing a spin-off series for NBC for The Good Place. What's good? We're talking to real life people. We've had almost 1,000 submissions. So I've been going through that. My sister's been really a big help with that. So I really have not slowed down that much, but I have been watching a lot of TV. Vanderpump Rules, oh God, I don't know why I still watch the show, but I am looking at it. We're going to talk about it. I've got a good guest, Mandy Slutsker. She talks about it all the time on her show, so she's really a specialist here, so we're going to hear from her. And then Kate Casey. Kate Casey she has a similar format to what I'm doing now, where she has, different guests come on to talk about individual shows. And so we're going to have a little chat about this Tiger King documentary on Netflix. Let's talk about that, because that was a total mess. And I'm just surprised it ended where it did. I mean, I feel like there's so much more to come with the story. I know that, different sentences have been handed out, but there's more to the story. So I'm like, why did it end here? But we'll talk about that, the highlights and the lowlights of that coming up. Bethany Frankel, did you see this? She's really doing a lot with her BStrong Disaster Relief Foundation. She's donating 1 million masks to hospitals. She said she's working with manufacturers. I was wondering how that works. Like, wouldn't you just donate the money and then they purchase it from their provider, or supplier? But the world that we live in, there is nothing. There's no infrastructure like that. So good for her for getting her hands on these masks, handing them over. Thank God for the private sector, because the system we have in place has done nothing for us, and that's all I'll say on that. But good for her for showing up, doing the right thing. I heard that the manufacturers of the Louis Vuitton perfume are creating hand sanitizer. That sounds awfully fancy, and I'm glad to hear that. Christian Siriano, he's creating masks, sewing. He has world-class sewers. And I mean, they're basically making like couture masks for these people, which is a fantastic thing. I believe he tweeted or Instagrammed Governor Cuomo, and it's just nice to see people do their jobs, because it's rare. And so many people can't. And I know I complain about a little bit about what I have to do with my day job, but I am so fortunate to have it. And that's what I remind myself. Not only am I lucky to have it, but I'm creating content for people who really need it. And that's similar to what I'm doing here. So you can bet that there'll be more coming. I'll always let you know, too, where you can find me on other shows, should you want to hear them. It's just another show to listen to. I don't care if you're interested in hearing my opinion or not. It's just something else that could fill some of your time. And that's the latest. So let's chat with Kate Casey and talk about this Tiger King documentary. The ranting continues. I am joined by Kate Casey from Reality Life with Kate Casey. Welcome back to Grant's Rants.
Grant, I love being with you. You're one of the best.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same about you. So I'm glad that we got to do this. And I'm glad that we get to talk about something a little different than Bravo. I'm a little burned out.
Yeah, I'm super burned out. I always say that I think that the new wave of shows are on streaming media. And you're going to start to hear people talking about their love for shows on Quibi now. So I think Quibi, Netflix, Amazon Prime, they're kicking the asses of network shows, and kind of just fun to mix it up.
Yes, I'm starved for content. In this world where there's more than ever, I'm still starved for something new. I'm waiting to see what's next. So I get you on that. Let's talk about this Netflix Tiger King documentary. It's, for those who aren't aware or who have just kind of saw it and scrolled past, it's a 7-episode documentary series. It's around big cat keepers, exotic animals, and breeders, a real cast of characters in the United States. It's focused around Joe Exotic and Carol Baskin's legal battles, and there's a lot in between. I don't know where to begin with this, but what is your initial impression? Then I'll get into mine.
I loved it. Well, I think that I loved it because all of the characters are just bizarre. They're clearly unhinged. So it's the makings of like a made-for-TV movie on crack. Crazy, crazy characters, people worthy of being on reality television. I think that the structure of the docuseries is a little bit chaotic, but I also think it's because there was so much information within this story, so many players and layers to it, that they could do nothing but kind of throw everything at you at one time. And then the onus is really kind of on the viewer to kind of dig a little bit deeper to get more information. It's my understanding, because I interviewed Robert Moore, who did the podcast Over My Dead Body about the Joe Exotic story, that the directors of the Netflix series purchased all of the film that Joe Exotic had. There was basically a cameraman that followed him for years, and so all that footage was kept on his property, and they bought the rights to that. So that included all the film, all of his hard drives, so all of his text messages, all of his emails, they had the rights to it. So they had an enormous amount of information to sift through. Rebecca, who was one of the co-directors, spent hours and hours, hundreds of hours talking to Joe while in jail, because he's been in jail almost 2 years now. So I cannot imagine what a massive undertaking this was to put this all together, but I'm grateful for it because it's one of those fantastic docuseries that you just are excited for the next episode. And I think you'd agree with me that those kind of things are so few and far between to find. So I was excited for it. And I think that you can see that everybody's kind of getting a kick out of it. It's like it's this true crime kind of layer to it, but also it's almost like whimsical with the music videos. But then it's also dark because there's this layer of drug use and depression. So it hits on so many different levels. Remember that Malcolm Gladwell book, The Outliers, where he talked about why Heinz ketchup was like such a great brand because it hit all the five senses, including umami, and that no other ketchup company can kind of hit all those senses. I feel like this is the Heinz ketchup of docuseries.
I like that. It's funny you mentioned that was a series, and that they're few and far between to find. And that's the first thing that I wrote as far as my impressions go. I love a doc series. Serialized storytelling is always my favorite thing anyway, where you could end with a little bit of a cliffhanger. We saw this with the McMillions. Sometimes those cliffhangers paid off. Other times it was just kind of like a little bit of a pickup. But this show, what a cast of weirdos. For those who are, I mean, just look at the picture on Netflix. I mean, it's real backwoods country people. I mean, it looks like everyone's an alleged criminal. I mean, each person's worse than the next as far as morals go. I don't know. They all tie for last with me as far as like who I would ever want to meet.
Right. I think that there were two people that I kind of liked. I liked Travis, the husband. I felt like there was a sweetness to him. And as the story goes on, you're kind of questioning how lucid he is through this life experience that he's having with Joe. And I guess he reminded me of this boy I knew in high school who kind of even looked similar to him, but was just kind of lost, like somebody I would call like a bruised soul.
Yeah, very lost.
Way. So he was sweet, and I also loved the guy who looked like he was the guitar player in an 80s metal band. He had the long hair. I think his name was Kevin, maybe, I don't know. But the one who was kind of in charge of the Tigers. I thought he was kind of sweet too, and I felt so badly that they were paid so poorly. And from what Robert Moore told me is that Joe would lock the gates at night so they couldn't leave. Like their cars were inside, and they were paid only $150 a week. And most of them were addicted to drugs, or they had a criminal background. So their options to leave were few and far between. And some of them were living on the property in these trailers that just smelled and just reeked of cat urine. And they were covered in cockroaches. And I mean, he was like a slumlord without the building, just like a horrible person. And the net at the end of the interview was, he said that to watch the Netflix series back, he worried that people watching it would think that in some weird way that Joe was innocent. But he said, trust me, that the evidence is there, that he was not a good person, was breaking the law, and without question had bragged on and on about how deeply he hated Carol Baskin and wanted her to not be alive. So it's just kind of interesting to hear his backstory, but it's like a true crime doc, but with the zaniest people you've ever seen.
Right. I wrote this down because I was like, what are some selling points? It was like, so it's true crime. There's a little bit of a murder mystery if you count in this woman Carol's husband's disappearance, attempted murder, gay marriage, animal captivity, a reality TV element. And it's all relatively recent. I mean, even at the end, they talked about a raid that happened in December of 2019. I mean, what I was most captivated by, like, and I loved Wild Wild Country, but it was like a minute since that was really, a thing. This is all within the last handful of years and still continuing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do. So so love Wild Wild Country. That's one of my favorite
me
things
too.
to watch. That was so great.
So good.
Oh my God. I just wish that everybody would watch that. I'm still baffled that people have not watched that. But yeah, I think the great thing about it, because it's recent, is that the players are all still there, and some of them are still under his spell a bit. Because Robert was telling me that that he has, a jail email address that he is only allowed certain amount of messages that go out, but he sends them to his cronies, and then the cronies put them out. So it's almost like he's like the cult leader, but for a cult of people that have no teeth that are around tigers. It's just
right.
I asked Robert, like, why do people go to these places? It's just hard for me to understand.
Right.
Well, there's this element of danger, like to be in close proximity to an animal like that in the wild. It like gives some people like a high. And I just was like, I cannot relate to that in the least. I think like I'm a rule follower. I just don't relate to that at all. But also when he told me that when you're on the property, he said it is a mixture of like hay, old meat, and cat piss. I'm like, why would anyone want to like hang out? And he said the surprising thing is at one point there was like a bus full of kids, like 100 school kids that had come for a tour, and they're like in close proximity to a wild animal. And I'm just trying to think like what dumb school would arrange.
Yeah, I was just going to say, would you ever allow one of your children on that property? Like, who? Yeah, no, that's the whole thing is weird to me. I love seeing the inside of people's houses, and in the last episode, they showed a glimpse of his house, and I was like, what a story that must tell. Because I was dying to see more of like inside those trailers, because I'm just so nosy, I just wanted to know like what really was it like.
Were disgusting. Just they smell, and you would have these baby tigers, lions, and he was the first person that ever bred a liger, a lion and a tiger mate, like a baby. Right. And so they would be in like 4 or 5 at one time, babies, like in his little trailer, which was at the back of the property. And so it always smelled, and he'd have scratch marks all over his arms because they'd be scratching him. I like, why would somebody put themselves through this?
Oh my God. I know. I just want to echo what you were saying about Travis, one of his husbands. Like, I wanted to somehow, they're beyond help, but for some reason in my good heart, I just wanted to help those people. I was like, you're trapped. You're stuck on drugs and you're trapped. How can someone help you? I felt bad.
I felt bad too, but he also said that Travis's family, he had a really difficult childhood, and that his mom may have been a drug abuser too. So
most likely
he made this mention, and it might haunt me for the rest of my life, and hopefully not for you too now. But he did say that someone in Travis's life had said that he used drugs when he had to be with Joe. Like one time Joe tried to kiss him and he kind of flinched. Travis tried to kiss Joe and Joe flinched. So it wasn't like their relationship was like loving. No. That maybe he had convinced himself like, it made me, this was my opinion as an outsider, is that Travis may have been so addicted to drugs that he just kind of like succumbed to the sexual relationship because Joe would give him the drugs.
Yeah, that's how it was painted when I watched it. That's what I took from it.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. And that life of an addict, I mean.
Yeah. I'm not somebody that really understands that much about drug addiction, so it was hard for me to watch. It really did remind me of this guy from high school, so it was just super sad.
Yeah, but, Lost Souls. Yeah. I was wondering how they were going to end it, because, like I said, it is fairly relevant to the time that we're in with regards to, like, this is an ongoing story. So I was like, how are they going to end this? There's still plenty of people out there who are involved who basically have not been in front of a judge yet, maybe. Apparently, there's more to come. There's word out there from one of the documentary producers that there could be a follow-up to this. I think they're going to have to do something.
Yeah, but I always feel like I want that, and then it's like everyone's excited for it, and then I guess once it's come out and like a couple weeks go by and people aren't talking about it as much, that the producers are sort of, or directors are kind of like, screw it, it's too much work. But then again, since they own all the footage, maybe there was extra stuff that they just couldn't jam into the 7 episodes that they could easily put together for like episodes 8 and 9.
Right. I want them to do something. Now, on the flip side, another show like McMillions, I don't really need anything else from that. That to me was beginning, middle, and end. But this is still, these people are still alive. They're still out there. Some of these people, again, they haven't seen a judge yet. I think the feds are watching a lot of these guys, personally.
Oh no, there's definitely more going on. Yeah. Absolutely. But I love McMillions. What you should know also about McMillions, because I interviewed the producer. I
heard that
Archie,
episode.
And he said that they are doing stuff with some of the people like Frank Columbo and Doug Matthews. So there is an afterlife to it. I think, it'll be fun to kind of see what they come up with for them.
Yeah. This viewer, I don't know if I really need it, but that's me.
Yeah.
I feel like I got enough out of the doc. It was good. But now there's some feedback coming from now that the show has aired. This going back to Tiger King, Carol Baskin heavily featured throughout the show, a main character. She slammed the doc, calling it salacious and sensational, mainly because they alleged that she fed her estranged husband to wild cats to eliminate any evidence. She's a little off. Can we say this?
Yeah. She's definitely off. What I got from Robert and also from watching is that she's somebody who has had such trauma in her life that she loves to live kind of on the edge. He tells a story that's in my episode about what happened the night that she met Bob Lewis. That is very disturbing. Her husband, which I don't think they really explained that well in the series, is brilliant, like a Harvard grad. And I think he has been very strategic with their lawsuits. So if it were not for him, she may have been unleashed a little bit more. I don't know. There are a lot of holes in her stories, which kind of makes it mysterious.
Yeah. And when she's asked about them, there's just an odd, the answer, her delivery is odd to me. It's just very passive when this woman's potentially being accused of doing a lot of heinous things. And it's just, there's no urgency in correcting people. That's what I got out of it anyway.
Yeah, it's just odd.
Like if someone came to me with something that was vastly untrue and absurd.
That's with Robert's point too. He said if one of us had somebody say that, we would go out of our way to prove that it was wrong. But she just seems to have dismissed it for a long time. Like, oh, whatever. Yeah,
I wouldn't shake that off personally, but
right.
She claims that the directors approached her 5 years ago saying that this was going to be like an equivalent to Blackfish, the doc that tried to take down SeaWorld. So that's why she participated, because she thought it would take down these cat petting, breeding, private zoos and all that. So I can understand if that was the intention she went in with. It was a very different project that came out of the other side. But, she had to realize her story was going to be out there.
Well, I also think that she's a narcissist, right? So she probably was willing to do any interview. I think they all kind of are narcissists. The way that they're all making music videos, they had to be doing YouTubes all the time. I understand that's just a little bit of a competition thing between them, but the way that they constantly wanted to be had to get people's attention is a little bit odd.
I enjoyed the show. I encourage people to look at it. I know there's been a little bit of pushback because people don't want to see animal abuse. They think it's very dark. What would you say? Would you recommend it?
My friend asked me the same thing, and I told her you are going to see parts where parts of an animal are kind of being fed to the tigers. But she said, but the tigers itself are not hurt, and you don't see that at all.
Correct.
So if you're somebody who would break down, it is your understanding in different parts where there are animals that are the animals are being fed to the tigers. One last thing I'll leave you with is that Robert said, because he stayed there for a week,
Oh, God.
He said that he lived in like a bit of panicked fear because it was his understanding. They made it clear to him, I should say, that if somebody were to mess around, that the tigers can get rid of something in 15 minutes. In other words, we feed dead animals and old meat, and even we could feed a person to a tiger and they would be gone and done within 15 minutes. So here is this guy like claiming Carol fed her husband to a tiger, but it makes you wonder if there were other people that may have been disposed of.
It's very possible.
I'm like, oh my God.
I mean, I don't know anything, but it's like, I mean, these people, this is something I can never relate to. I mean, they have like big meat grinders and all these things that talk about the acid in the stomachs of the tigers that could dissolve bone marrow. I mean, nothing would surprise me. They're nuts.
It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Oh, man.
But we recommend it.
Well, Kate, you're a pro. Thank you for coming on. I want to direct people to your episode where they can hear even more from that podcast producer, the man who stayed on the property. I'll be listening. Where can people find it?
So just go to anywhere that you listen to podcasts, just go find it and search for Reality Life with Kate Casey. And then I've got a Facebook group, Reality Life with Kate Casey, where we deep dive not just docuseries, but reality shows and documentaries, and anything in an unscripted TV is like my umbrella. And I can recommend other great shows too.
Love it. Yeah, well, I'll be open to any recommendations you may have because I have some time on my hands, as we all do.
You should watch Formula One on Netflix. It's about Formula One racing. I know jack squat about car racing, but it's really good. It's really interesting to go behind the scenes of that sport. I knew nothing about it, but it's compelling because you learn more about the drivers and then the teams that are behind it and how the whole industry works. It's really compelling TV.
I will take a shot. I'll take a look at it. I'll give it a shot. Why not? I got nothing else. I got plenty to do, but I'm running out of TV, so I might as well just watch this. So I'll give it a shot. Thanks, Kate. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're listening to Grant's Rants. Subscribe and spread the word. There are a lot more rants to come. Listen anytime on all major podcasting platforms. And now, back to the show.
The ranting continues on the podcast. I am now joined by Mandy Slutsker from Is This Real Life with Mandy Slutsker. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back.
Thanks so much, Grant. How you doing?
Trying to stay busy. Like I was talking earlier on the podcast, I'm doing like weeding for the apartment complex. Like I look like a crazy person, but it's out of survival. It's just out of just trying to keep my brain occupied.
Yes. It's really important during these really difficult days and weeks and potentially months, which I'm just trying to take it day by day, though.
In addition to all of this, I've been watching a little bit of Vanderpump Rules, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you briefly, given that, you do work in global health, and I want to be able to talk briefly and get your opinion. I think it'd be silly to ignore that given the state that we're in around the world. Without getting too far in the weeds, I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on things and really what this means for us in the future.
Yes. No, this is absolutely crazy of a time to work in global health and just, having a background in epidemiology. This is a crazy moment. I think a lot of us who work in the community could have seen this coming, maybe not this bad, but for many years have been saying we need to have a pandemic response team. There was one under the National Security Council that was disbanded in May 2018 by the president under the request of John Bolton. They wanted to trim down the staff. I do not believe that was a smart idea. We learned a lot from the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, which eventually did come to our shores. But Ebola is a very different disease. It usually kills the host before it's able to really infect that many people. And it's only transmitted through bodily fluids, especially blood. Whereas this disease, it's airborne. So it's something anyone can get. And it's a lot more infectious than previous outbreaks of the flu, including the swine flu in 2009. This is a much more infectious and much deadlier. So it's just kind of the perfect storm.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people that are anxious, not just economically, but also at kind of the restrictions that have been put in place by the government. We're not a country that's used to having our government tell us what to do. So
don't love that.
People don't love it. But we'll learn from the other countries, and we'll learn from what's going on in New York. And hopefully we can emerge from this with a much stronger understanding of, one, how we're all connected to one another and how what each of us do impacts another person and impacts everyone else around us. And two, the need to invest in public health and in, there is a reason we have government and there is a reason we have scientists working for the government. And so when we cut things like that, it makes us even more vulnerable. And that's the case that we've been in.
Yep. That lines up with what I've been believing and hearing as well. So,
yeah.
Well, in the middle of all this, somehow, and I'm struggling with this, we have to care about Vanderpump Rules that was shot now 9-10 months ago. The world is totally different. I have a very hard time, and I've said this many a time, getting into these shows that have been recorded so long ago. I mean, I was thinking back. So it's Tom Schwartz, he celebrated his birthday in this most recent episode. His birthday was in July. Oh, Sandoval.
Yeah.
His birthday was in July 7th. Like, I can't even tell you. I mean, there was an earthquake here on the 4th of July. That's my only memory of July of 2019. So, like, I have a very hard time caring.
It's tough. I do enjoy watching the show. I think with social media, it's different now because we know what they're doing now because we all have Instagram Live and can get a glimpse into their lives. Back 10 years ago when I was just getting into Housewives, we didn't know what was happening in between. And so it was more exciting, I think.
Right. You were hearing about things for the first time.
Yeah. We didn't know about, now things get leaked to the press and then we know what to expect. So going into the season, we knew to expect both Jax and Brittany's wedding and also the breakup of the Witches of WeHo, which has been really odd and uncomfortable to watch.
I normally would not watch the show if I didn't have the time on my hands. I'm really sick of it. I don't care for it. I will say this show is very fun to watch with other people.
Yes.
I really like to watch it. Now nobody's here anymore. Everyone's moved away for indefinitely. So the city is cleared out. So I don't have anyone to watch the show with anymore. So I normally would not watch it. But again, I have this time on my hands. I'm this far into it, so I take a peek. It's a good background show. But I want to get your thoughts on the new cast that they introduced this season. Because I have my opinions, and I want to get yours first.
I don't think they fit naturally in to this group. I think the only people that are new, the only person that's been new that has been plucked out that has worked are James and Lala. And the other people that have worked have been significant others of OG cast members because it's kind of a natural thing. Like if your friend gets a new boyfriend, you become friends with them too. With having like Max and Brett and Dana and Danica, it just doesn't feel natural to me. I do think Danica, of all of them, is a more interesting person to watch because she's so volatile
Right.
and seems to kind of definitely actually work there, but the others, and I do like Dana as a person. I think I enjoy watching her connect with the newer cast a bit more, but when they just film with the new cast and Sheena, I don't care. I don't have any interest.
I'm going to echo that in a certain way too. I mean, I think Dana's probably the only new cast member that works for me personally. I can see her hanging out and sticking around. I still don't know the name of the two guys. And I said this on another podcast. I feel kind of ignorant not being able to differentiate the two because like, come on, like not everyone looks the same, but to me, they're so insignificant. These two guys, I even forgot that one of them was called Max. I just knew there was Brett and another carbon copy running around. I didn't even know the difference. And so to me, the new people are a total failure, and it's not necessarily the producer's fault. It's that they introduced these two new leading guys who are barely on the canvas because of, I guess you mentioned in your podcast, they had to re-edit around them because of their racial comments.
Yeah, I believe they took out the pieces of what they filmed, and then for at least 3 episodes after those texts or those Twitter like whatever their mean, horrible tweets, racist tweets were found, they edited them out of doing their confessionals.
Now, what does that represent, taking it from 3 episodes? What arbitrary number is that? Does that all of a sudden make it better and we can accept them now?
No, I have no idea what the difference was. I did notice when they first were brought back into confessionals, though. It was about 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So I don't know if they were trying to ride the wave, or if they wanted to dock their pay a certain amount, or if it ended up being too difficult to re-edit everything.
Yeah, I'm sure it's costly.
You know, and now we're hearing from Andy Cohen that they're trying to do some editing at home, the various editors for Evolution and all of that. So that's not easy either when people are in quarantine. So I think that this, coronavirus and everything is going to impact our television watching, not just in the next few months, but over the course of the next year.
Unfortunately, I think so too. I mean, everything has shut down production-wise. Some shows have been off for a long time. It started with just studio audience, and then I know game shows, they're compromised. We're going to have kind of a backlog of repeats, I think, for a while for a lot of stuff, especially if it's reality, but even scripted. I mean, nothing's happening. Nothing is happening whatsoever. So I'm kind of enjoying it now. I hate the ripple effect of all this. And especially if, God forbid, if we have to go in and out of waves of all this stuff, then nothing will ever get off the ground. I know there are bigger problems in the world, but at the same time, content has never been more king than it is right now.
Think of Lala and Raquel. I've really been wanting to get your thoughts on all of it.
What are my thoughts?
You're I don't.
I honestly don't care. I so don't care. Again, this is a 9-month-old conversation.
Do you care about the witches of WeHo?
Probably even less. I think this Britney, though, I think she's really milking this wedding for every goddamn drop she can find out of it. She's even making Jax carry her over the threshold and up to the bedroom. I mean, let it go.
She's very into the wedding. I don't know if she's into the marriage. So it'll be interesting to see a few years from now. And my prediction is that I don't think either of them will ever leave each other. I think they'll just be miserable together. But when the show is over, that's going to be difficult for them because that's how they get their money. And that is one of the things that I think she was really attracted to, is this exposure on this show.
I think you're right. Yep.
So we'll see what happens when it all crumbles down.
We had to sit through a funeral for a lizard. I will say that the visuals were very nice. I mean, gone are the days. I know exactly where they had that funeral. It was the Mondrian Hotel. It's a beautiful area. I mean, people are in the pool. It's oh my God, this is now we look at this and it's that was an era in time. I mean, now you can't even get into that building.
Right. Are you finding it where you're watching them and if they touch their face, you're no, get away. What are you doing? You're within 6 feet of each other.
I know, right? All they do is drink and party and get close to each other and do all this stuff. That's unhealthy. Yeah, no, for real. I love that at this funeral, though. Typical. No one has a job. They can all be there in the middle of the day to waste their time for a lizard that was alive for 3 weeks. Nobody has a job.
I know. Well, I mean, this is their job.
This is their job, I guess.
She has a lot of jobs. I mean, she puts out that podcast. She's got a lot of content. She's going on a tour. I saw her on tour. She was not bad. I was pleasantly surprised at the show that she put on. I also didn't pay a lot for it. I kind of was on I think it was her 3rd show, so it was $30 or something.
What is her show? What is her show exactly?
So it kind of starts out, at least the one I saw, with one of her best friends, Taylor Strucker, who's a radio personality in New York City, who does a stand-up bit for maybe 10 minutes or so. And then Bo comes out, and then Stassi comes out. And she does questions and answers from the audience where you put your questions into like a cauldron and they pull it out and answer. They ended up actually, I was at the show where they announced that they were getting married in Italy, and they hadn't said that publicly yet. And she realized that not even all of her family knew that. And we found out. So that was interesting. Seeing their dynamic play out in real time is really cute. Just because, I don't know, they have a good like shtick going. And she does like funny videos, and she does her own kind of monologue. It was a little bit stand-up-y, but with audience involvement. It was cute. It was a nice evening. I only spent about $30 on it. I think now the tickets are really expensive. So
it sounds like $30 is plenty enough for what you're getting, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like that's plenty.
I'm a huge Stassi Schroeder fan. I just find her funny, and I like that she has, come from this like 23-year-old, like really bratty, bitchy girl into a businesswoman who's actually making money off a brand. I don't think that's an easy thing to do. If you look at all the other people on the show, none of them have really built a brand the way she has. Also, my dog's name is Stassi, so I'm partial to that.
I remember you telling me this.
My dog, as a puppy, was a very season 1 Stassi personality. So I'm the devil, and don't you ever forget it. So
that's funny. Yeah.
So I enjoy her.
These events, I think that like they got to be under $50 because then you're going to tack on, rideshare, or in my case, it's like extremely expensive valet parking plus drinks. You're not going to get a drink at an event for under $10. So, like, I don't know. I mean, these nights can turn very expensive very fast. So, I think they need to be controlled.
It was fun. It was also fun seeing her in DC. I was like, why DC? And then being in a room with other people who also watched the show was fun, because I live in a city where a lot of people don't watch reality TV necessarily. And so to be like around them all at the same time, it's like, reality TV nerds unite,
Tell me, what are your final thoughts so far? I want to know, especially when it comes to this. I want to give you an opportunity because you asked me about Lala and Raquel.
Yes. Oh, man. So with what happened a couple years ago between James and Logan, there's this podcast that was recorded a while ago, the Pump Rules podcast, and they had Logan on, and he basically shares the true story, which I believe, which is that him and James Kennedy were best friends who also had a physical relationship with one another, that he was pretty volatile when he would drink and use drugs along with that, and that he obviously wasn't being quiet about being physical with Logan, but when it came out on the show, they obviously got in a huge fight about it, and James Kennedy was physical, like he punched Logan. They were outside of a club, and that ended their friendship. I believe this all happened. This was back when Raquel was in college. I believe she keeps her head in the sand, and that's fine. Like, if that's what she wants to do, that's on her. I think it's kind of obnoxious for Lala to try and be supportive of Raquel, who has this boyfriend who's an alcoholic and newly going to AA. She's newly going to Al-Anon meetings. Why bring up this thing that Raquel's never going to acknowledge that her boyfriend cheated on her, whether it was with a woman or a man? It doesn't matter. She's never going to acknowledge it. So why bring it up?
Right.
I just think it's really bitchy. And if she's trying to be supportive during this tough time, of all the things that I've seen on the show, one of the most real things is watching James try and get help, and watching Raquel finally stand up and put her foot down and say, I can't be with you if you won't help yourself.
Yeah. She has put up with enough, but she's also doing it to stay on the show too. So it's like there's something in it for her, I believe.
There is, but I feel like she did so much research before talking to him. Like, people don't just, know what Al-Anon is and go to meetings, and, I feel like she really cares about him. I don't think she's doing it just for the show. I feel like she really loves him, probably more than a lot of these other people, who are in relationships. I feel like she loves him so much. I don't know why.
Right.
And I don't know how much of it is codependency versus love, but she clearly wants him to get better and be better.
Well,
And so
the one thing I didn't buy was that Lala was going to waste her time talking to Raquel about any of this. I mean, in real life, people like that, like once you fall out, like why even bother? But I thought that was a total producer setup.
Oh, totally. And when she's like, you can insult my character, but not my intelligence. I was like, oh, so it's okay to insult your character? Like she's not very well spoken, right?
No.
I don't think that means that she is incredibly dumb, but I do think she's very naive. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to share with you is I believe the whole like Stassi, Katie, Kristen thing is way deeper than them being annoyed with her about Carter. I think there is something that they don't want to talk about on camera.
I think you're right, because they said like, oh, we're not sisters. No. And I can't imagine what that would just be over what we've seen.
I don't know all of it. There was a nugget of information a couple weeks ago where Stassi mentioned that Kristen still maintained contact with her mom and her sister, even when her and Kristen were kind of falling out. And I feel like that's a boundary issue where she's talking to her mom, and Stassi and her mom don't have the best relationship. I mean, we saw last season her mom was pretty awful to Stassi and told Stassi in like a drunken emotional stupor that she wished Stassi was more like Kristen, right?
Yes.
So for Kristen to then go and still talk to her mom like as if her and Stassi are in a good place is not okay. And I feel like she crossed boundaries with her family. And I think Stassi wants to protect her family. And I think she's very particular about when they're on camera, her family, and how they're portrayed on camera because of what happened last season.
Could be. And that's something that could have come up at the reunion, because it's like within the universe that we've seen. I thought it might have been something off camera that like they'll never reference. But like what you're saying is something that they could show the flashback of that comment her mother made.
Right. I don't know. There has to be something much, much deeper that there always seems to be things that they're unwilling to discuss on camera, and then sometimes later on. So for example, the Logan and James Kennedy stuff, everyone knew they were hooking up, but no one wanted to like say it, right? Everyone knows that Jax like had been, I don't know if he still does, like a ton of cocaine, and it's like only seasons later do they start joking about it. There's definitely some like pretty serious things that have gone on with these people, and they all have this bond where they acknowledge like what they will and won't talk about off camera. Nowhere near as bad of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, where they like actually talk to each other before they go on camera about what's off limits.
Right. The worst show.
This seems to be, it's heading that way. Whereas the first season, it was like nothing was left unsaid.
Yeah. As someone who's watched reality TV forever, I will say there's nothing like a first season of a show. Because they really don't know what they're in for. They don't know the game yet, and it's pretty authentic. And then, yeah, like you said, the more time that passes, people are able to self-produce. They're able to hide things. They are able to create some type of code amongst friends on the show. Like, we're not going to go there. We're not going to cross that line. And then we're kind of just left with a lot of very petty side conversations.
Right.
And I don't want to watch that. So I get exactly what you're saying.
But I'm still going to continue watching. I will go down with the ship.
Yeah.
Just call me the band in the Titanic. I will not give up on these people.
Thank you so much. Where can people check out your podcast for even more in-depth? And you talk for a long time. You go really in-depth on these shows.
Really in-depth about these shows, especially Vanderpump Rules. You can find me. It's Is This Real Life with Mandy Slutsker. You can find me on iTunes and Spotify and SoundCloud and wherever you listen to podcasts. And I'm on Twitter at Mandy Slutsker, and then at ITRL_podcast, both on Twitter and Instagram. So I mainly tweet about public health, but I have, interspersings of Vanderpump Rules content. So the former Ebola czar follows me. I'm always wondering what he thinks when I'm talking about like Stassi and Kristen.
I like it. An eclectic feed. Mine has just turned into The View.
Oh.
Well, I Callie growling in the background. My computer's running low. I hate to run, but I gotta go.
Thank you so much, Rants. I really appreciate you having me on, and stay safe out there.
You too. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been Grant's Rants. Support the Rants on Patreon at patreon.com/Grant's Rants. Follow Grant on Twitter and Instagram at It's Grant's Rants. Cover art created by Howie Ronay. Voiceover by Aw Yeah! Original theme music by Alexander Arntzen. The Grant Michael Collection.